Some people don't destroy your life with violence. They destroy it with patterns, small behaviors, repeated reactions, tiny moments most people ignore until it's too late. Have you ever noticed how certain people always leave the same feeling behind them? Confusion, exhaustion, doubt. And the strange thing is, they often look completely normal on the surface. Polite, friendly, intelligent, sometimes even caring. But with time, you begin to notice something disturbing. Human nature always reveals itself eventually. And the people you should fear the most are rarely the loudest ones. I am the Watcher, and here, in Shadow Insight, we observe the hidden mechanisms behind human behavior. Tonight, you'll discover the 3 behaviors that quietly reveal someone's true nature. Not the obvious signs, not the clichés people talk about online, but the subtle patterns that expose manipulation, hidden resentment, and dangerous intentions. Because the truth is, people rarely tell you who they are directly. They reveal it through repeated behavior. Watch carefully. One of these signs may already exist in someone around you. And if that's the case, you may finally understand why your instincts never fully trusted them. If human psychology fascinates you, subscribe to Shadow Insight. And tell me in the comments, have you ever ignored a red flag and regretted it later? Have you ever noticed how some people completely change depending on who they're talking to? With one person, they seem humble and respectful. With another, cold, dismissive, even cruel. At first, most people don't pay attention to this because socially intelligent people know how to adapt their image. They know when to smile, when to flatter, when to appear kind. But watch carefully. The mask usually disappears around people they consider useless. A waiter, an employee, a quiet friend, someone with no influence, someone who cannot benefit them. And suddenly, another version of them appears, more impatient, more arrogant, more contemptuous. The strange thing about people is, their true character is often revealed by the way they treat those who cannot improve their status. Not those they admire, not those they fear, but those they think they are above. You see this often in relationships. At the beginning, some people are attentive, affectionate, intensely present. They answer instantly, they validate you constantly, they make you feel important. But the moment they feel emotionally secure, their behavior changes. The effort disappears. The respect weakens. The warmth becomes selective. Why? Because for certain people, respect is not a value. It is a strategy, a temporary investment. And once they believe they no longer need your approval, your position changes in their mind. Have you ever wondered why some people become colder after gaining power, success, or control? Because power does not always change human nature. Sometimes it simply reveals it. A person who only respects useful people will eventually treat everyone as disposable, even you. At first, subtly, then openly. And most people realize it far too late, because they keep remembering the charming version from the beginning, without understanding that the beginning was often the performance. Some people don't argue to understand you. They argue to dominate the emotional atmosphere. And once you notice this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. Have you ever spoken to someone who always needs to be right? Not occasionally, constantly, even over insignificant things. The restaurant, the route, the story you told, the emotion you felt, everything becomes a subtle competition. And if you disagree with them, the conversation suddenly changes energy. Their tone hardens, their patience disappears. They interrupt more, they stop listening, because for them, disagreement feels like a loss of control. Jung believed that people often hide the parts of themselves they fear the most, and many controlling people secretly fear something very simple: feeling powerless. So instead of building genuine connection, they try to control perception, control emotions, control reactions, control reality itself. That's why some people constantly correct others, constantly challenge details, constantly force their opinions into every discussion. It's rarely about truth. It's about psychological positioning, about staying above, about preserving dominance. You can even notice this in small social situations. Someone shares good news, and they immediately minimize it. Someone talks about pain, and they redirect attention back to themselves. Someone expresses an opinion, and they subtly mock it. Why? Because certain people experience conversations as status battles, not human connection. Freud once observed that unresolved insecurities often return through disguised behavior, and insecurity disguised as confidence can become extremely manipulative, especially when the manipulation is subtle. Because the most dangerous controlling people rarely shout, they exhaust you slowly. You leave conversations doubting yourself, re-explaining yourself, defending emotions that were clear from the beginning. And over time, you stop speaking naturally around them. You start calculating every word, every reaction, every silence. That is when control has already entered the relationship, quietly, almost invisibly. And the frightening part is, many people confuse this behavior with intelligence, strength, or confidence. But real confidence does not need to dominate every room. Only fragile egos do. This is the behavior most people never want to accept, because once you see it, certain relationships become impossible to unsee. Have you ever wondered why some people become strangely distant when your life improves? Not openly hostile, not directly negative, just different, less enthusiastic, less supportive, less present. At first, it feels confusing, because these same people were extremely active in your life when you were struggling, when you were uncertain, heartbroken, lost. They listened carefully, they gave advice, they stayed close. But the moment you become more confident, more independent, more successful, something changes inside them. Human nature always reveals itself eventually, and some people feel emotionally safer when you are beneath them, because your weakness gave them psychological comfort. It gave them importance, control, superiority. Adler believed that many human behaviors are secretly driven by compensation. People who feel small internally often search for situations where they can feel psychologically elevated. And sometimes that elevation comes through your suffering. This is why certain people unconsciously sabotage others. Not always in obvious ways, sometimes through subtle negativity. Small discouragements, passive comments, false concern. You're changing. Be careful. Don't get too confident. That probably won't last. Watch carefully. Genuine people feel inspired by your growth, but resentful people feel threatened by it, because your evolution forces them to confront their own stagnation. And many people would rather reduce your light than face their own darkness. The disturbing part is that envy rarely looks like envy on the surface. It often disguises itself as concern, humor, advice, protection. But beneath it, there is discomfort. Because your success changes the balance of the relationship. Suddenly, they can no longer feel superior. Suddenly, they can no longer control how you see yourself. And that is when subtle hostility begins to appear. Not through direct attacks, but through emotional withdrawal. Coldness, dismissive reactions, invisible resistance. Have you ever shared exciting news with someone and immediately felt their energy change? That reaction tells you more than words ever could. Because people can fake support temporarily, but emotional energy almost always exposes the truth eventually. The strange thing about human behavior is, people rarely miss the signs completely. Most of the time, they feel them early, but they explain them away. Have you ever caught yourself justifying behavior you would normally reject? Maybe because the person was attractive, charismatic, intelligent, successful, or simply because you became emotionally attached before seeing their true nature clearly. That is how many dangerous relationships begin. Not through blindness, but through gradual self-deception. You notice the disrespect, but tell yourself they are just stressed. You notice the need for control, but call it confidence. You notice the hidden resentment, but convince yourself they are only misunderstood. Why? Because once emotions become involved, objectivity becomes difficult, especially when someone gives you intermittent validation. One day warm, one day distant, one day supportive, one day cold. This inconsistency creates psychological attachment far more powerful than stable affection. Because the human brain becomes obsessed with uncertainty, obsessed with regaining approval, and slowly, you stop analyzing their behavior clearly. You start analyzing yourself instead. What did I do wrong? Why are they acting differently? How can I fix this? But watch carefully. Healthy relationships rarely leave you in constant confusion. Real respect feels stable. Real connection feels emotionally safe. Real trust does not require endless decoding. The dangerous part is that manipulative people often understand human emotions extremely well, sometimes better than emotionally healthy people. They know when to disappear, when to return, when to flatter, when to create guilt, when to make you fear losing them. And because of this, many people remain loyal to relationships that are quietly destroying their peace. Not because the signs were invisible, but because emotional attachment made the signs uncomfortable to accept. That is why human nature can be so difficult to confront, because sometimes seeing the truth about someone also forces you to see the truth about yourself, your fears, your loneliness, your need for validation, your difficulty letting go. And for many people, that realization is far more painful than the manipulation itself. The truth is, dangerous people rarely reveal themselves immediately. They reveal themselves through repeated patterns, small behaviors, subtle reactions, invisible emotional dynamics most people ignore until the damage is already done. Tonight, you saw the three behaviors that quietly expose someone's true nature. People who only respect others when they are useful. People who turn conversations into control. And people who feel more comfortable around your weakness than your growth. But the deeper revelation is this. The greatest danger was never the signs themselves. It was your willingness to explain them away. Because human beings are emotional creatures. And once attachment enters the mind, clarity often disappears. That is why so many people stay connected to individuals who slowly drain their confidence, peace, and equity. Not because the truth was hidden, but because accepting it felt emotionally unbearable. With time, you begin to notice something unsettling about human nature. People always reveal themselves eventually. The question is only whether you are willing to see it before the consequences arrive. I am the watcher, and this was Shadow Insight. If this episode made you reflect differently about someone in your life, subscribe and leave a comment below. Tell me, which of these 3 signs do you think people ignore the most? Because sometimes, the behaviors we tolerate today become the pain we cannot escape tomorrow.